The only light in the living room came from the phone in Frank's hand. It cast a pale bluish glow on his face, carving out the lines around his eyes. The rest of the house was tomb silent, a silence that had become his constant companion since Carol passed. He tapped the screen, his thumb hovering over her picture. May. Her profile photo was what had stopped his endless scrolling 3 months ago. A bright, genuine smile framed by long black hair. She was standing in front of a wall of lush green foliage that seemed impossibly vibrant. He told her it was the most beautiful smile he'd ever seen, and she'd sent back a string of blushing emojis. Only for you, my king, she had written. His thumb moved, scrolling up, into the recent past. The messages were a digital tapestry of a life he felt he was already a part of. I miss your voice. Just thinking of you and smiling. When you come to the Philippines, I will cook for you every day. Adobo is your favorite, yes? I will learn it. He'd read those lines 100 times. They were his anchor. He had a recurring daydream where he was sitting at a small wooden table, the smell of garlic and soy sauce in the air, watching her move around a kitchen he'd helped pay for. It felt more real than his own quiet house. He scrolled back down to the present, to the dead space at the bottom of the screen. His last message, sent 6 hours ago, hung there, unanswered. Just checking in, hope the week is starting off okay, thinking of you. Before that, 2 days ago. Is everything okay, my love? You've been quiet. The last message he'd received from her was a terse, problem with the roof again, big storm. That was after he'd sent the $500 for her mother's hospital bill. He'd done it without a second thought. Of course he would. You help the people you love. When the roof problem came up a week later, he'd hesitated, just for a moment. He'd asked for a picture of the damage. The request felt sour the moment he'd typed it, a betrayal of the trust they were building. Her response had been a single, wounded-sounding word. Why? He hadn't known what to say, so he'd just sent the money. 300 this time. It wasn't the money. He'd spent more than that on a new set of tires last month without blinking. It was the feeling that followed, a hollow unease that had settled deep in his gut. The easy, flowing conversation had dried up. The good morning texts stopped. The blushing emojis vanished. He stared at his own reflection in the dark screen, a tired-looking man in a worn-out armchair. He pressed the power button, and the screen lit up again, showing her smiling face. The anchor. He zoomed in on her eyes. He'd always thought they were full of warmth, of a shy affection just for him. Now, in the sterile blue light of the phone, he wasn't so sure. They were just eyes. A pretty girl smiling for a camera. The thought felt like a small treason. He backed out of the photo, his thumb tracing the empty space below his last message. No new text. Not even the 3 dancing dots that signaled she was typing. There was just his question hanging in the digital silence, and the quiet, heavy breathing of a man sitting alone in the dark. The phone buzzed in his hand, a sharp electric shock against the silence. Frank's heart jolted. A message from May. The relief was so immediate and overwhelming it made him dizzy. My dearest king, I am so sorry for my silence. The storm was very bad and the signal has been terrible. I was so worried you would be angry with me. I have been reading our old messages to feel close to you. His anxiety dissolved like sugar in water. There it was, the warmth, the affection. He'd been a fool to doubt. Of course there was a simple explanation. He read the message again, his thumb stroking the screen as if it were her face. Then he saw the rest of it. My heart is heavy today. My brother, he's a good boy, very smart. But his school is threatening to kick him out. They say he must pay a special fee for his final exam or he cannot graduate. I do not know what to do. I feel so helpless. The hollow feeling was back, a cold stone in his gut. It wasn't a request, not directly, but it hung there in the space between them, a carefully constructed void he was meant to fill. He felt a prickle of something he didn't want to name. Resentment? No, that wasn't right. It was fatigue. He was tired of the problems. He typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on something that felt both caring and cautious. I'm so sorry to hear that. It sounds stressful. When is the feed due? Her reply came almost instantly. It is very soon. I am so scared for him. She hadn't answered his question. He stared at the words, a subtle shift in their dynamic clicking into place. Before, their conversations had been a two-way street. Now, he was an obstacle to be navigated. Her messages weren't for him, they were for a purpose. His thumb, acting on its own volition, scrolled up to her profile picture, the smiling girl in front of the jungle wall. He tapped it, and the app showed him other photos she'd uploaded. He found one from a few weeks back. She was holding a kitten, her face beaming. The caption read, "A new friend. My family is not happy. They say we cannot afford another mouth to feed, but I will find a way." He remembered the photo. He'd sent $100 for cat food and supplies. A week later, he'd asked how the kitten was doing. "He is fine," she had replied, before changing the subject. He'd never seen another picture of it. Another photo caught his eye. It was from a month ago, a selfie of her at a table laden with food. "Sunday lunch with my family. We are so blessed." He'd loved that photo, the glimpse into her world. But now, looking closer, he saw things he'd missed. The table was set with matching pristine white plates. Behind her, a waiter in a uniform was walking past. It wasn't a home, it was a restaurant, a nice one. The air in the room felt thin. Frank's breathing was shallow. This wasn't a game he was playing, it was a script he was reading from, and he'd just found a typo. The loving words, the family problems, the smiling photos, they felt like a collection of props. He needed to break the script. He needed a real moment, something spontaneous and unrehearsed that couldn't be faked with a carefully chosen emoji. His finger hovered over the video call icon. They never video called. She'd always had an excuse. The signal was bad, her camera was broken. She didn't want him to see her when she wasn't looking her best. But the doubt was now a physical itch he couldn't scratch. He had to see her. He had to see the room she was sitting in, the real-time expression on her face. He pressed the button. The phone began to chime, the sound alien and aggressive in the quiet house. It rang, a hopeful, terrifying pulse sent across an ocean. Once, twice. On the third ring, it stopped. The screen didn't say call ended or no answer. It flashed a different message, a system-generated one in stark black letters. Call failed. User is on another call. Another call. The words were flat, impersonal, a digital dead end. Frank stared at the screen, his mind refusing to process the 4 simple words. It wasn't a bad signal. It wasn't a broken camera. It was a choice. She was talking to someone else. The phone, which had felt like a lifeline moments ago, was now a cold, foreign object in his hand. The silence of the house rushed back in, heavier than before. For 3 months, he had poured his hopes into this small glass rectangle, believing he was building a bridge across the ocean. Now, he saw it for what it was, a one-way mirror. His thumb began to move with a new, detached purpose. The search was over. The investigation had begun. He went to her profile, but this time, he didn't stop at the photos she'd curated for him. He tapped on her friends list. He'd never looked before. It had felt like an invasion of privacy. And what was the point? He trusted her. The list was long, a mix of Filipino and American names. He scrolled, his eyes scanning for anything that felt out of place. He clicked on a profile at random. A man named Dave, older, like him, a widower from Ohio. His public posts were mostly about fishing and his grandkids. Frank scrolled down Dave's timeline, a knot tightening in his stomach. A week ago, Dave had posted a picture of a new bass boat. Frank's eyes caught a comment below it. She is beautiful. You are a king. I hope you can take me on it one day. It was from May. The pet name hit Frank like a physical blow. King. The word was a key, and it had just unlocked a series of identical doors. He wasn't special. He wasn't her king. He was just another king in a long line of them, each ruling a tiny separate kingdom of hope. He clicked on another profile, then another. The pattern emerged, stark and undeniable. Older American men, recent widowers mostly. Each of their pages was littered with May's comments, a breadcrumb trail of the same emojis, the same breathless admiration, the same future casting. He found photos of flower bouquets with captions like, "A surprise from a special lady in the Philippines." He found a post from a man in Texas celebrating a new laptop, with a comment from May. "Now we can talk more clearly, my love." Frank had paid for that laptop. He had thought it was for their calls. Each message, each photo, each problem was a piece of a puzzle he hadn't known he was solving. The roof, the brother's school, her mother's hospital bill, they weren't crises. They were screening questions, auditions, and he, Frank, had been one of the lead candidates, the most promising prospect, the one who asked the fewest questions. The phone buzzed, a new message from her. "My love, I am so sorry. My phone died. I had to borrow a charger from my neighbor. The power here is so unreliable after the storm. I was so worried about you. Did you think of a way to help my brother?" Frank read the words and for the first time felt nothing. They were just letters on a screen, a script she had memorized and performed 100 times before. The excuses were the costume, the pet names were the props, and the problems were the plot. He finally understood the rules. The game wasn't about connection, it was about conversion. The goal was to convert his loneliness into her security, his generosity into her assets. The words had meant nothing, the transactions were everything. He looked at her smiling profile picture, the girl with the jungle wall behind her. The warmth in her eyes was gone, replaced by the cold calculus of her hustle. He wasn't a partner, he was a mark. The anchor hadn't just been lost, it had never existed. He typed a reply, a single word, "No." Then, with a steady hand, he pressed block. The screen refreshed, the conversation, 3 months of a life that had never been real, vanished. The only light in the living room was the pale, bluish glow of a blank screen. And then he turned that off too. He sat in the dark, the phone now a dead weight in his lap. The silence in the room had changed its texture. It was no longer a lonely, expectant quiet, waiting to be broken by a notification. It was the absolute, profound silence of a theater after the cast has gone home, leaving behind an empty stage. There was no one on the other side of the world thinking of him. There never had been. His gaze drifted from the blank phone to the framed photo on the mantelpiece, the one he hadn't looked at directly in months. Carol squinted against the sun, her smile genuine and a little crooked, a laugh caught in her eyes. They were on a boat in the middle of a lake, the sky a brilliant cloudless blue. He remembered the feel of the sun on his skin, the sound of her laugh, the easy comfort of her hand in his. It was real. It had cost him nothing and had given him everything. What he'd had with May, he now understood, was the exact opposite. It had cost him thousands, and it had given him an echo, a well-crafted performance of affection he had paid to watch. He wasn't a fool who had been tricked. That felt too simple, too clean. He was a man who had walked into a shop, seen a beautiful story for sale, and willingly paid the price. He had purchased the sweet nothings, the blushing emojis, the daydreams of adobo in a kitchen he would never see. Each wire transfer was a ticket to the next act. He wasn't just the audience, he was the producer. The uncomfortable truth settled on him, not with the fire of anger, but with the cold weight of clarity. The game only worked because he wanted the fantasy just as much as she wanted the funds. It was a transaction disguised as a connection. Frank pushed himself out of the armchair, his joints protesting. The first pale light of dawn was beginning to filter through the blinds, tracing lines of dust on the furniture. He walked into the kitchen, the linoleum cold under his bare feet, and started making coffee. He wasn't heartbroken. Heartbreak was for endings. This was just a cancellation. He hadn't been a king, a lover, or a partner. He was a client.